Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Menstrual Cycle Mastery Podcast. I'm here with you today. I'm Lisa DeYoung, and I am with a listener of the podcast who I have been in touch with a little bit over recent weeks. So, welcome to our guest, Theresa Won Kress. You're very, very welcome. So Theresa reached out to me actually a few months ago about my work and that she's been a listener of the podcast, doing the inner work, and has her own journey with menstrual cycle awareness. And I love hearing from you, from people who are listening to the podcast and hearing your stories and wanting to share a little bit about your journey. And there's such a lovely integration that happens when we share our story and speak about our experience with our menstrual cycle and menstrual cycle awareness. And so I'm so glad, Theresa, that you reached out to me. I'm very grateful to you. So why don't we start with an introduction? So where are you based, who you are, whatever you'd like to share, Theresa, as an introduction.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. So I'm based in Los Angeles, and I've been working in the entertainment field for about the last 20 years. So I come from this very intense background. I've always been super high achieving, very high functioning. And I started my own company in 2017 and had my first child 4 years ago, almost 5 now, in 2021. And that's when I found out about PMDD, when I was going through like a really intense postpartum journey and started this really deep trauma therapy sort of work on myself, where I did EMDR. I also learned about internal family systems. All these pieces started to really gel together for me because I was going through so many personal shakeups with work. There were lots of ups and downs with the writer strikes in Los Angeles and Hollywood. And then having a kid, right at the tail end of the pandemic, and realizing as I was emerging that I was in this place where the world as I knew it had completely shattered. And I felt internally completely shattered, but physically and outwardly, I appeared very fine. And I bounced back very quickly, like physically speaking. So I don't know, I kind of come from this background of always thinking that I need to prove and achieve, my worth. And I really started this journey, I would say 4 years ago, after the birth of my child, of kind of slowing things down and really getting to know myself. And even before that, when I left to start my own company, I had started to really look at like the work-life balance because, every month, like I was calling out sick at work and I didn't know why. But it was a very stressful environment. It was not very healthy for me. It's really been this journey. I would say that started in 2017. And then I got really serious about like the personal piece of it in 2021.
After your baby was born?
After my baby was born.
Yeah.
And I still, consult and work with writers currently. And I write myself. And I've started my own Substack through my company called One Way Media. And now I have a Substack called The One Way, where I'm starting to really write about and share my personal journey with PMDD, trauma, and now finding out that, I also have like complex PTSD, ADHD, like it's this lovely symbiosis of trauma, I would say.
There's a lot of layers there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I hear you. Okay. Wow, Theresa. So you've been on a journey since before 2020, since 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Okay. So tell us a little bit about, because I know the listeners will be curious about PMDD. How did that present for you? And how did you know the difference between postpartum and PMDD?
So I think I knew because I'd always had really bad periods, like since I was a kid. There were, like I remember even at 12 years old, like I'd have to stay in bed all day sometimes. But I come from a family that was very much like go, 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 do, do, do. So there weren't that many, like I just wasn't really modeled how to slow down and take breaks. And that really just, followed me throughout my life. And then my husband, we've been together for almost 15 years and we've been married for almost 10. So we've been together for a long time. We used to joke and say like, not only did I have PMS, but we would call it like post-MS because it was almost like the week after my period was actually harder. And I would find myself feeling really triggered, like going back into the past, just not really being able to stay focused in the present, even as I was outwardly presenting, with the high achievement and just extremely high functioning.
Mm.
But once I was pregnant, the symptoms went away, like because I wasn't having my period anymore. And I had a really good pregnancy, and I had done a lot of work to grow body awareness and start really attuning to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think before pregnancy, and I'd already kind of started changing like my food and nutrition because I've always struggled with sleep. So yeah, sleep's always been a big thing. Brain fog, fatigue, chronic pain, like those symptoms have always presented. But before I had a kid, I was always able to push through, or I found ways to like numb and distract, and I was just so busy and productive and had this big lifestyle. And then I think with the pandemic, everything really slowed down. And I actually felt quite safe because I was like, oh, for once, I know where everyone is. I know what's going on. Like, we're all doing the same thing. But yeah, it was really through pregnancy when I noticed that I just wasn't having these symptoms, and I wasn't fighting as much with my partner, and I wasn't fighting in my head, about things that I was feeling triggered about. And then once I had my baby, there were just a lot of external stressors having to do with jobs for both me and my partner, and just the industry, and a lot of uncertainty. And, and then you have a real live human being that you are tasked with keeping alive and looking out for. So yeah, through pregnancy and birth, I would say I had really good experiences. And then it was like, as soon as I had the baby, it just felt like the world got dark. And I kind of just emerged kind of seeing like, oh, no one really cares about, women and children, like, because they took such good care of me. And then in the hospital, it was kind of like we were just thrown into a room. And the directive that I received was just, you just need to take care of the baby. But I had a 30-hour labor where I hadn't been sleeping, and I didn't take, pain intervention until like the very end because I was trying to see what I could do. So I'd been through a lot with my body, and then I didn't really get to rest because they were constantly poking and prodding at you. And then in the postpartum journey, like I was at one of the best hospitals in Beverly Hills, and it still just felt like, it just did not feel like quality treatment. And I think some of that was a pandemic. But I was just kind of shown like, it just kind of felt like, oh, I had this baby, and now it's like, that's it. All we care about is what you're doing for the baby, and there really wasn't a lot of care, I think, for me as a mother. And yeah, so then when I started noticing, there were just a lot of changes that started happening in my place with like relationships. And now I know that that's pretty normal, but I did not hear my journey being mirrored by anyone else around me. Like none of my girlfriends seemed to have the same experiences that I did. And even people who said that they had like the baby blues, would go on medication and would have like really great experiences with it. And there was something in me that was just kind of like, I think that this is deeper than that, because I'd already been doing some of that personal work, to look at like my own history and my own patterns. So yeah, I just got really curious about like what's going on, because I thought I'd done all this great work to be like so prepared as a mom. And then like I had my baby, and he's my everything. But it's like, how do I do this where I still have a relationship with myself, and I'm still looking out for myself so that I'm not just, completely disconnected.
Wow, that's so powerful, Theresa. Yeah, and it must have been so hard. Like, as I've heard that a couple of times, where women feel like they're looked after in pregnancy and in labor, but then they're kind of like spat out at the end, and that's kind of it. So I'm sorry you had to go through that, and I appreciate you sharing that, because there's not a lot of light shone on that issue, and such a vulnerable time for women. And that's a very long labor, so much to go through. And then, like to feel like so vulnerable. And then probably the pressure to kind of perform and keep up and prioritize your son and everything while you're exhausted on every level. Like, I can totally see how that would bring up so much for you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of my like old relational traumas were triggered specifically because there was so much shakeup that happened with my girlfriends. Like with some childhood friends where like I had my baby, and I'm thinking like, oh, like I'm going to have this village. And then, people change. I think things just change. Like when you're buying a house, when you're getting married, like it shakes everything up. So the support system that I thought I had, I wasn't able to really lean on it. And it actually caused some more drama than like support. So I think it was very specific because it was around, when I started getting my period, where there's like bullying happening or just like mean girls. So I really look at that because for me, like my PMDD is so tied to my relationships. Like it's so relational. It's not just it's like not in my head. I didn't make it up. It's something that happened as a result of a lot of trauma I experienced early on. So I think a lot of that was just kind of re-triggered, as because it just felt very isolating when I thought it was going to be this really happy golden time of feeling like cared for and having all these like friends built in. And I really had to start over. And I think that that's something that's very common as I'm starting to really talk about it and share about it.
I appreciate you sharing that, and I can see how that is the case, and it's different to the story that we're kind of sold, right? And I suppose all your friends are all in different places too, whether they're a mom or not a mom, and it's just navigating all of that, yeah, and then feeling isolated. Tell us more about that insight you got that PMDD is so linked to your relationships. I'd love to learn more about that and how that shows up for you.
Yeah, I think I just look back and I have so much compassion for my younger selves, especially like the younger, like teen, preteen, like the 11, 12, 13-year-old who really just wanted to belong. And for me, there's also a piece of it that has to do with racial trauma because I identify as Korean American and I grew up in a very predominantly white neighborhood. So I just didn't have a lot of people who looked and talked like me. And so I think that there was already this built-in sense of like, I don't belong no matter what I do. So I think a lot of that led to like trying to mask, trying to be a certain way, trying to fit in. But I was still a very outspoken and opinionated girl. Like I've always had a strong sense of self and I know my own mind. So those things didn't really lend itself to feeling included all the time. And so I always felt like it was my fault. I thought it was in my head because there was a lot of gaslighting as well when I would say, hey, this is happening. And people would be like, well, that's not real. Or whatever's happening to you isn't a big deal compared to like these other people or, this group or whatever. So I think around that time, I just remember like my dad listened to a lot of folk music and I used to listen to that, the Paul Simon song, like I Am a Rock. And that kind of became my motto at like 11 years old of like, I'm a rock, I'm an island, like I don't need anyone else. And I sort of bulldozed my way, through my teen years and my early 20s. And again, like it all presented very well, like socially speaking. I appeared to belong, I appeared to have it all. But internally, I just never quite felt like it was fitting. And so then when this shakeup happened, when I became a mother, first of all, I came out of pregnancy with just a lot more boundaries than I'd ever had before. So it makes sense that a lot of my relationships started shaking up because I didn't even know like what a boundary was. Like I used to just put up walls. And then I started really learning, like how I want to be treated. And I started telling people that. I started really speaking up for myself. I got a lot more clear on my values and my needs in relationships. And so I kind of quickly saw like, wow, I've been kind of carrying around these old patterns, these old beliefs about friendship and what it means, to be in relationship with others that come from a very young child's mind, and like a young child who felt very alone at the time and did not have the support or the safety to really feel some big feelings. And then, so I think that was what was sort of re-traumatized is when I was going to my friends saying, oh my God, I feel devastated inside. Like I feel completely shattered. Like I don't know what's happening. And people were like, they're like, well, you have a baby now. You've got the husband, you've got the job, you've got the whatever. Like, what do you have to complain about? So I started just finding other spaces and really just continuing to lean into my truth instead of trying to hang on, because that would have been sort of the old way is, oh, how can I make myself pleasing? How can I mask again? And I think at a certain point, as a woman, I was just kind of over it. Like I couldn't do it anymore. And so much of my energy and love was going towards my child, So at a certain point, it's just kind of like there's a line that I'm not willing to cross anymore, that I can't abandon myself to try to keep other people happy and not walk away.
Wow, that's so powerful, Theresa. Like what a transition to go through, and also a very painful truth to look at, and I imagine there was a lot of grief in that for you.
Yeah, there was a lot of grief. I feel like I'm a professional griever in some ways, but I've gotten really comfortable with it because for years, I think before I did like my trauma work, I just felt like a leaky faucet where I was just crying and I didn't know why, but it was probably just years of suppressed emotions, you know? And now I really look at the grief process and like for me, it's like a daily ritual, and it's kind of like shedding. It's sort of like exercising of like my nervous system kind of has to like sweat off, you know, the things. And now I don't need to know why all the time. It's nice when it happens and I know, but for most of my cycle, I have no idea. And then right around PMS, it's like I get the psychic download and I'm like, whoa, these are the truths, you know, and this is why. And there's like a lot of expansiveness that occurs. So it's really cool. But for the first, you know, couple of years when I was going through it, it was extremely intense and like debilitating. And now it's much easier, I would say.
Wow. So you've really mastered a lot of skill, the inner skills that we talk about here on the pod. You're working the skills of the nervous system and the body and the cycle and the emotions, it sounds like.
Yeah. And listening to your podcast really helped, you know, because I first found it when I was just looking for PMDD resources, and I listened to the Healing from PMDD podcast. And I think you've done an episode about regulating the nervous system and PMDD specifically. And I think because I'd gone through some of the trauma work, even though there were other people and, you know, influencers and other sources out there, I wasn't finding anything that spoke to me on this very trauma-informed level. And I would say that that's something that I've really found that's very incredible about your work is like that trauma piece and like really combining, you know, polyvagal theory and like really getting to know the nervous system. And then this whole work around like the somatic part, you know, and connecting like the mind-body connection. So I would just listen to like regulating your nervous system in some of those episodes, like whenever I felt really like I just didn't even know what was going on. And it was like the soothing balm where I'd go on my walk, I'd listen to the podcast, and then I kind of emerge being like, oh, like I'm okay. And what do I need to do right now? You know? So yeah, it really felt like this, it's been like a companion for me in a way, because there just aren't that many sources, especially here in the US, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, there weren't that many communities. And if there were, they weren't speaking in a way that felt safe for me, you know, because even in wellness, I think like I found that I have to be very careful about like realizing first and foremost, like I'm a highly sensitive person. I do have PMDD, I have ADHD, I have CPTSD. Like I need something else, you know, what works for someone else might not work for me. So I've really appreciated the messaging that I always hear in your work, where it's never about adding. It's always about like, how can I do less? Like, how can I take things off my plate? How can I just sort of relax into myself and my body, you know? And that's incredibly healing. So I really resonate with that messaging.
I need to start listening to this podcast when I'm going on walks. Sounds great. Oh, thank you, Theresa, for that. That's so lovely to hear, because it was my intention to be a companion for people as opposed to an intellectual information dump, you know? So, and rather like the experience of listening to be nourishing or inspiring or supportive. So yeah, that's so lovely. And it's lovely that we're here talking about it in real time, which is great. And you're doing the work, you know, you're taking it in. I'm just so struck by your awareness and your desire to feel better and to be better for yourself and for your family, you know, and for your other relationships. And that you like, it sounds like, you know, you don't want to suffer, you know, so you're taking action and doing things. What was I going to ask you was, oh yeah, you mentioned about being a high achiever, and that really struck a chord with me, and I know it'll strike a chord with a lot of listeners. So tell us a little bit about that and where you think it came from, and is it still in your life? And yeah, just kind of how that journey was for you.
Yeah, you know, okay, so I'm going to talk about some other stuff that I guess is more like light and fun, but I also love like astrology and bringing that into all of this, because for me, it just makes sense. But I'm a Capricorn in many pieces of my birth chart. So there is you know, it's kind of innate to just be hardworking and high achieving. And like, you know, if I see something that seems impossible, like I just get really curious and I really just want to understand. And then I become like sort of an expert on it. And then I get to help other people with it, you know? But I think that really comes from my family upbringing. You know, my parents were both very successful. They both immigrated here separately from Seoul and met in Los Angeles in the 80s. And So I think that there's always been this drive in me that feels like this pressure of like not, I'm the firstborn, and also it's like, oh, my parents came from a different country and they were able to really make this beautiful life for themselves, and just feeling a lot of pressure, whether it was, actually external or something that I just picked up myself. And I think I've always been sort of this like little adult since I was small, and yeah, just being really sensitive. And I had a dad who was very into like literature and philosophy. So he was always like encouraging me to read books that were far beyond my scope as a kid. I think, some of it's just kind of built in. But yeah, like it's just funny because I look back at my career and I'm like, I don't know how I lived like that. Like, I don't know how I pushed myself so much. I'd be going to film festivals and watch like 6 movies a day, barely eating, or like going to the bathroom in between. If you're on set, like you're barely eating because you're just kind of hanging out. I take lots of meetings. Like, it was very high volume and a lot of socializing. And it's funny because now I know so much more about myself, that I am more of like an ambivert, and I was kind of presenting more as like an extrovert for a really long time. But I think I just really internalized these very systemic ideals that I saw as like, oh, if I do these things, if I act in this really masculine, ruthless sort of way, and if I just look really great and like try to be as, thin and cute or whatever as possible, like that will keep me safe. So it's funny because it looks really shiny and great, but when I do the deep work and I'm pretty comfortable with my vulnerability, I know that a lot of it actually stems from feelings of worthlessness, and a lot of it stems from feelings of shame. And so I've really had to cultivate a new relationship with shame and learn the difference between like healthy shame and then when it's actually just punitive and it's the suffering, because I think I've been addicted to suffering like my entire life. I was also raised Catholic, so that kind of informs that too. I really come from this like intersectionality of like shame-based cultures. And now my work is to find out the truth about who I really am and how I want to live, and like learn how to participate, in systems and societies that maybe do not benefit me, but do it in a way that feels authentic to me. And that does create much more safety. And I'm finding that I'm attracting much more like-minded people and colleagues as a result of that.
Wow, gosh, Theresa, everything you said is so powerful. I want to have it on repeat. It's so powerful. And thank you for sharing your cultural history and background, and then the bit about your dad and your star sign. I think that all is important, isn't it? Because it's who you are and how we're wired, I guess. Because I'm hearing there's a systemic piece there that's kind of an old piece. Like, your parents had to work really hard, it sounds like, and they moved. Did they move to the US? What was it? They met in the 80s, but they moved. When did they move to the US?
No, they had both immigrated from Seoul separately with their families, and they met in Los Angeles in the
Okay.
80s.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So there was it their parents that had moved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they had the immigration thing, and I suppose there's a loyalty then in within you and the offspring to the suffering of the ancestors, right? Who had to come and do, and so the working hard thing is kind of in the family. It sounds like, but I also hear, and then the shame you talk about, and then Catholicism. I know a lot about that being in Ireland. So there's a lot in the mix. But I also love that you acknowledge the passion for life. It sounds like there's a lot of that in your family system as well, like passion for life and ambition and creativity, and you have that too. So I'm curious about, because what I see sometimes is people who swing and they kind of go from high achievement to then feeling like they can't do anything. So where are you at with that now? And because you still have a creative career and you're self-employed.
Yeah. So, one more thing I'll just add about my family history really quick is
Yeah.
also, I think something that lent itself to me feeling different is, my mom's family, like my grandfather was a diplomat. So he was always living abroad. So every summer we were traveling to like Europe or Singapore, like wherever he was living.
Wow.
So it's like, even within, it kind of just makes sense that I've always felt this sense of like, where do I really belong? Because I feel like a citizen of the world because of that upbringing as well. And in terms of what you just asked, I think even from when I was young, I did notice these periods where I would be like really productive, really high achieving, and then it would be followed by periods of burnout and feeling completely like in the freeze, completely overwhelmed, like not knowing which way is up. So, I've had myself screened for bipolar disorder like a number of times, and each time it's come back as like, oh, but it really is tied to your cycle. And that was another reason why I really started diving into the PMDD of it all. So I still experience that, and I will say that that's gotten so much more manageable in the last 6 months, as this work is starting to really integrate. And I think that now that I'm accepting, oh, I'm not always going to be able to be at like 100%. And sometimes I'm going to be at a lower percentage of energy and like whatever's happening in my brain, and trusting like, and I think I've heard this on your podcast from other guests too, where for a lot of us who identify this way, our 60% is probably like 100% for, someone else. So I think once I started to really accept my own sensitivity, and that means that I do need to take breaks from people. It means I need to take breaks from like being productive and like always planning and always scheduling and always thinking and, strategizing. Like now I give myself permission to have days that are just like sort of thinking days, because I'm not the sort of writer who's going to sit down and bang out pages relentlessly. Like maybe I could have done that in high school, in my 20s, but just where I'm at with my life now I'm also, I'm there for my kid. We don't have outside help. So it's largely falling on me as the full-time caregiver, and I run my own company. And now I'm really pursuing this creative path, and I'm getting really into menstrual cycle and awareness and spreading that work as well. I have to just really be in the reality of where I'm at and who I am. And I think when I have acceptance around that, I do end up still producing much more, even on the days where I used to feel like I could do nothing. And then there's other days where it's like you've talked about that in your podcast too. Some days it is just watch Netflix, like let yourself do that, like eat the chocolate or just do the thing, and that is that self-care piece. I'm starting to value so much more, because I come from a place of self-neglect and thinking that that's really glamorous and that's what you're supposed to do. And that's what I see normalized around me. So, in the beginning, it was kind of scary to be like, hey, I'm going to rest, or like, I can't go out tonight, or I can't go on this trip, And now I have a little bit more flexibility and freedom today than I did probably when I started this journey, where it was a little bit, a little bit more rigid of like, oh no, I'm going to be in PMS. Like, can I do this thing,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The fear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the fear comes in, and the managing. Oh, it's a tricky one. So you engaged in a lot of awareness work, different types of therapy. You discovered menstrual cycle awareness, stuff we're talking about on the podcast. How was all of that journey for you? And where are you at now with your experience of PMDD?
I would say in terms of where I'm at today with PMDD, I'm much more at peace with it. I think when I first found out about it, I did kind of go more into like let me find out everything I can about it. Let me become an expert at it. And then if I just resolve all my trauma, then like it'll go away. And now I'm much more clear on, nope, like no matter what, I'm going to have PMDD. Maybe I'll get to a point where it doesn't affect all my decision making and it doesn't affect all my relationships anymore. But at the end of the day, I have to just remember, like, this is just part of who I am, and it's here for a really good reason. And I earned it honestly. It comes from a very honest place. Like, and I think in terms of doing all that trauma therapy and, weaving in the menstrual cycle awareness, I will say, I think the menstrual cycle awareness is essential for anyone with a cycle. Whether you have, really heavy trauma or not, it is such a game changer. Like, it is very revolutionary. It's completely radical. And for me, like, it is my way of just sort of reclaiming like my sovereignty, and reclaiming and recovering a sense of self and like agency and autonomy. And for me, a lot of the trauma was suppressed self-expression, like being authentic and then feeling shunned or shamed or punished for it. And so to be creating community spaces now where I'm actively and very openly talking about my own journey. And I talk about periods. I talk about the menstrual cycle. And it's funny because even when I was little, I was so curious about periods. Like I started a period club when I was 12, So now I'm like, oh, it makes sense that I landed back in this space, And it used to feel so taboo. But I think that I'm starting to just grow a lot more confidence of like, why don't we talk about this? Like we experience it every day, And it's changed everything, like the way I eat. It's changed my sleep because sleep was a really, really big thing for me, where I've never really been a good sleeper, I guess. But I think once I started to understand, like, my body has infradian rhythms, like I have a menstrual cycle. I'm not meant to live by the circadian 24-hour clock. It's kind of trippy. It's a little psychic, but it kind of opens up the mind, to play with time in a completely new way. So it's really exciting and it really informs my creativity. It's starting to really come through in my writing. So like I'm just in a place now where I want to share this with lots of people. And I've started weaving it into the work that I do with creatives and with writers. And I started just introducing it to people, and people have been coming up to me saying, I have PMDD, I have endo,
Wow.
I had trouble with this, or yeah, sometimes I just had really crappy periods and I don't know why. And so it's been pretty amazing to see how so many people don't know about this kind of work. And
Yeah.
that includes doctors, and medical professionals. And so it really is like, I just feel like I'm here for a purpose now. I feel like I have PMDD for a reason. I feel like I'm talking about it. I'm talking about it with you. I found your podcast. Like it really feels like it's something that gives me purpose now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. Because it's funny, my next question was going to be, Theresa, if PMDD was a voice of wisdom, what would it be telling us, or what would it be telling you, or what would it want us to know?
Yeah, I think PMDD really is a voice of wisdom. I love that you phrase it like that because I think what I'm seeing with the relationships is around PMDD, I would always have some sort of relational shakeup. And it would either be like I'd want to break up, with a job, a boyfriend, or a friend, or I'd have more drama around that time. And then like PMDD passes, and I would kind of gaslight myself and be like, oh, it was just in my head. Like that person didn't really do anything. I'm just a crazy person. And like, woe is me. And now I've started to really listen and understand like it's intuition,
Mm.
and there are many times where PMDD actually served me, where
Mhm.
it's saying like, absolutely not, or this is a boundary, or this is a line that you've been crossing like your whole life. Like, what are you
Mm.
doing? So instead of gaslighting it away, I think now I just kind of sit with it.
Mhm.
I do not act on all of my PMDD
Yeah.
triggers. I have enough recovery to know like not everything is true. But then afterwards, when I sit with it, something true emerges of like, oh, you know what? I do need to take an action and I need to walk away from this, or I need to say something.
Yeah.
Or, oh, you know what? That like I was on it, like I need more rest. I need more self-care. And so that's why I was feeling so itchy about this one relational thing. And lots of times when I walk through it and I don't have drama or stress, it's amazing. Where I'm like, wow, like that was a very like new corrective experience that I just got to have during PMDD. And that used to feel completely impossible. So I think there's so much wisdom to be derived from listening to your symptoms.
I love that. And I love how you encourage us to hit pause and sit with the discomfort, right, that PMDD brings up for us, because it is very uncomfortable. And you're right, like sometimes the PMDD, the stuff that comes up, we make a meaning, right? And we have a thought that's just a thought, like break up with your husband or your boyfriend or burn down the house or whatever, leave the job, and obviously if we were to believe all those thoughts and do them, then we would just be isolated in life, and that's not good either, right? So it's just hitting on the fight flight response, and that fight flight, it's a flight, really. It's a flight response. It's easy to leave. But actually, what I love about what you're doing is you're sitting with the discomfort of that and then getting to the truth, which is, oh, I need to have a difficult chat, or I need to put in a boundary, or I need to just hit pause. And then I imagine that regulates your flight response and it doesn't go to the extremes as much. Would that be right?
Yeah, it's like every cycle, I feel like there's so much progress I get to see. It's like a progress report
Yeah.
in a way,
Yeah.
of like, oh, that one thing that I would have driven me crazy or that I would have reacted to, like, wow, I really held space for myself.
Yeah.
And like when I'm in it, it does not feel good.
No.
There's so much inner critic that's like, what are you doing? Like, survive, just all the survival mechanisms coming up. But every time I get through it, I'm like, oh, like, yeah, like, because I used to go to really dark places. Like I've experienced suicidal ideation. That was a really big piece of it. And now I understand, like, oh, even that's a feeling. Like, it's a feeling. It doesn't feel good. It's really heavy. And that's the way I experience it. I can't speak for anyone else's experience with that. But for me, I'm starting to understand it's a feeling. And usually it's coming from a very deep need that's been ignored, or minimized or shamed away for a really long time. So even that, to be here today and be like, wow, I don't experience that the way I used to.
Wow.
And yeah, there have been times where I felt like I wouldn't survive my PMDD windows because it's felt so bad. And now I'm like, oh, these are all feelings, like sensations. And there's really no way out except to get through it and sit with it. And, it's not sexy. Like it doesn't sound, it's not like a solution. It's not like a magical thing, but it's really just learning how to be a human being and like accept everything that comes up.
Yeah, no, it's not pretty. It's messy. Well, with that, actually, practically speaking, what do you do? What does Theresa do to support herself in the messy, dark times that come up or heavy times? Like, what kind of self-care tools do you like to lean on?
I love going on long walks. I absolutely need periods of like unstructured free time, which can feel impossible with my child being 4 now. But even just taking like a few minutes here and there to myself. I love writing. I love journaling. I love listening to podcasts, that help me feel like just a little bit less alone and like I can understand myself. I do have a really amazing support system today that pretty new, but is really just kind of teaching me different ways to be in specifically female friendships. And it's been really uplifting and really supportive. And, people who don't know anything about PMDD, but are happy to listen or just able to hold a space. So I do find that I am no longer an island. Like I do need the co-regulation, but it does need to be the right kind, It's not just about like who's free and like, let's just get together and that's going to do it. It is more intentional. But yeah, that's been kind of the big thing is I think especially as my kid's been going through preschool and I've really had to step it up and show up every day, no matter what mood I'm in and like just learn to be around people is all of like my childhood relational traumas are like just triggered left and right because it's school. But like it's been an amazing way to build community and really just kind of like practice new behaviors and meet some incredible women along the way. So that's been extremely healing. And I'm not someone who thought I would ever say that. Wow. Like, oh, it's, I need friends. Like I do need people. And that's been kind of the biggest realization, I think, going through this journey is like, I'm not going to get through this alone. There's just no way. And I don't want to anymore, like I just can't.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it sounds like you're really in a receptive place to different experiences of friendships, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think learning to receive, like teaching my nervous system to be okay receiving, like building that safety, like that's been a huge piece. And yeah, just receiving people as they are instead of being in my head of like, well, why did they say it like this? They should have said it like that, like letting go of black and white. Yeah, like the black and white thinking, the controlling, and again, all of that comes from a really honest place, but these are outdated strategies, right? Yeah. Like they're just not effective for me anymore. Like I want friendship. I want to laugh. I want to have fun. I love when you talk about pleasure, and like introducing pleasure in all its forms. And it's something that I've had to like learn as an adult. It's like what is fun now? Because, I used to drink, I used to party and like, I don't do those things anymore. So it's kind of been like, yeah, how do you connect with people, in a way that's just more authentic and real?
Oh, gorgeous. That sounds really connecting and fun and free and light for you, which is lovely. Yeah, it's so great. Wow, it's all really making sense, your story, Theresa, just hearing about your story, your experience of all this, your career and how that's woven in. And I know you've got your self-care, but it really sounds like you've really completely transformed how you relate to yourself and to your cycle. And to PMDD itself as well. Like there's a different story you're within yourself, which is so, so powerful. And, you said you mentioned ADHD, PTSD with a C in front. I can't even say it. And then your sensitivity, you're highly intuitive. You're also a very creative person. I love that you mentioned one of your non-negotiables is unstructured free time. I can totally relate to that, especially if you're doing a lot of writing and creating. And now you're in this place where people are coming to you with their journey, with their cycle. So obviously there's kind of like they're picking up on something. And you mentioned in your email to me that you are potentially signing up to the Menstrual Coach Academy with me this year. So you're looking to do cycle coaching and step into that as a work an extra thing. I'm not sure what, but yeah, I'm curious to hear more about that and your plans with all of this.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I will be enrolling. I haven't had time to fill out the application yet, but it's
Lots of
definitely on
time, don't
my
worry.
to-do list. And I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, I think at this point, it's such a natural part of who I am that it just makes sense, and I've been listening to your podcast for a couple of years, and I would always hear the pitch for like, oh, we are going to have openings, we're going to have classes, whatever. And I think I was always kind of like, okay, like that's great for other people, but like I'm happy to just listen. And, I'm getting a lot from just, with like pain management and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But this year I really sort of like something came up in me that was like, wait, why don't you just go do it?
Mm.
Like you're talking the talk, like this really resonates with you. Not that many people are doing it. Like this is needed, and then in my own circles and the groups that I'm part of, like I do have women just clamoring for information
Yeah.
and being like, whoa, I found this app that one of my girlfriends had introduced me to, and it combines like astrology with your cycle and hormones, which
Oh,
is really
cool.
fun.
Yeah.
And, I got like all my girlfriends on it. So now we can like track each other's cycles, which is really interesting. But, just it's kind of like, oh, how can we make this fun again? Because I remember being 12 years old, starting this like period club, and it was fun for us. It wasn't this like scary anxiety sort of thing. It was very much like, oh my God, like what are periods? Like what's that all about? And now as a grown up, I'm like, we kind of need more of that again. Especially as women, and to do it in a way that feels trauma informed and safe. Like that's really what I want for myself. And so I want to offer that to others. And so, yeah, because I'm already doing it in my own work as a creative, I just started introducing it to some of my existing clients saying, hey, I'm going to be officially certified later on in the year, but we can start weaving in this work together. And so that's really exciting because it's like a new beginning. And like, it just feels like a natural evolution. So I'm excited to then, be in the space with you,
Yeah.
and with others and have this other community. Like, I'm very curious to hear what that's going to be like, to have women who are living and breathing this sort of work. And as you've mentioned, also being in different stages of life,
Yeah.
because I'm probably going to be in perimenopause soon. So it always helps to have people who've walked that path before you who can then also speak to it openly and honestly. And I hope that I can do that for others with what I've been doing with PMDD.
Wow, Teresa, I love that. You're going to be such a great coach. It sounds like, yeah, great. And you're doing the number one priority is that we're all doing the inner work ourselves, when we're also holding space for others. And you have that down for sure. You definitely are looking at things that come up for you. You mentioned a Substack and that you have clients. What is it that you help people with and what are you writing about?
So my Substack is called The Won Way. And it started out more as like, I was going to talk about like craft tips with like, entertainment and the industry. And then as I started writing, a lot of poetry just started coming out. So it's really just an open space for me to express whatever's on my mind. But now I've been weaving in the PMDD, like intergenerational trauma, like this recovery journey that I've really been on, and just starting to dive more and more into women's health because I've also just been pitching to outlets, and there's a lot of publications who are really eager for this type of material. And I had no
Mm,
idea.
yeah.
And these are all like mainstream places, because I thought like, oh, it's too niche, like who cares? And again, people are like, no, like this is fascinating. Like I
Yeah.
want to know what this is about. So yeah, it's just really building, I think, a body of work where I'm just sharing very honestly about what goes on with me. And sometimes it's expressed through poetry, sometimes it's through, more personal, like deep essays. But yeah, it's just fun. It's a fun place for me to explore. And then I work separately with clients, like one-on-one, and people can reach out to me. And I also manage clients in TV and film. So I'm still like keeping that piece alive,
Gotcha.
but I'm finding that there's a way to do it where I start with this kind of at the forefront instead of this being like the last thing.
Yeah.
You know, where I used to be like, well, I'm a producer and I'm a manager and I'm like this, and really trying to fill this idea that I had. And it's really based on like white men. And I'm like, that's just not who I am. And like, no matter what, I will never be that. And I will never be treated or responded to, you know, in the same way. So this piece to me transcends, you know, all those sorts of classifications. And as I do that, I get much more comfortable just being myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Oh, I love that, Theresa. It's so authentic. Yeah. I will make sure to link the One Way Substack in the show notes. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the listener today, particularly for people who are maybe in the thick of it with PMDD? What kind of message would you like to give to the listeners?
Yeah, you know, I think the thing that I always remind myself of that helps me through some of like my darkest moments or just when things feel really hard, it's just to always remind myself, you know, I'm not alone. Like no matter what, I'm not alone. There are so many people out there who are experiencing this too. And the more that you open up about it and just start sharing yourself, like I've been finding in my own experience, like I receive and gain so much freedom. Like it's very liberating to do that. And that connection really does matter, but it starts with connecting to myself, you know, first and foremost, and not outsourcing my well-being, like not outsourcing my boundaries or my safety to anyone else. And really, yeah, just sitting with like my true face and showing that to the world and being okay with it. And that there is so much hope, you know, and I think I've heard you say that before too, but there is so much hope. It's not a punishment. It is here for a really good reason. And there's a lot of power to be derived from it, you know, once you start to really befriend it and start working with your cycle instead of waging war, you know, against it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so inspiring, Theresa. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story. Honestly, like, it's so lovely to meet you. And I was intentionally not like chatting with you too much before we hit record because I was like, I want to get this juicy goodness on the record. And I so appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty and paying it forward. And there's something about paying forward your story. And I know you get this because it's in your nature and in your work. There's a deeper integration that happens, isn't there, when we tell our story, and it does inspire other people listening. So yeah, for those of you listening who can relate to Theresa, as she says, there's hope, and you keep listening to the pod and, you know, get the menstrual cycle mastery skills, you know, which Theresa is doing, and working on her nervous system and her emotional well-being and her relationships. And I love that you use the word freedom at the end, you know, that you feel liberated and free. And I also sense that you're confident and very self-trusting when it comes to, you know, the ups and downs with the cycle, which is, yeah, beautiful to witness. So thank you so much, Theresa, for being here. And I'm looking forward to having you in the academy. Yeah,
I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to it.
Yay! Me too.
Yeah.
For anyone listening, the doors are currently open and we are starting in July 2026. So I'll link that in the show notes too. And if you've any questions at all, you can get in touch with me. And that's it. Thanks, Theresa, for being here. And
thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining me on the Menstrual Cycle Mastery Podcast. If you'd like to begin this work with me, I run the Menstrual Mastery Collective, a monthly membership where you can dive deep into this work live alongside me and a supportive community. I'm also the founder of the Menstrual Coach Academy, a professional training space for trauma-informed coaching and facilitation. Head on over to the links in the bio to sign up for courses, programs, and grab any resources available. I'm so glad you're here.